Okay, so we have decided to become more minimalist, to save money, save the planet, or just simply get more out of experiences rather than stuff. But where do we start, my friends? I reckon that the best place to start is to find some kind of definition of what minimalism really means. Though I suspect it will be different depending on who we look to give us advice. Throughout my research on this topic, people have definitely had a tendency to overcomplicate the meaning of minimalism, in my opinion. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to draw upon a quote that I heard from Newport, one of my faves, during an interview on the Rich Roll podcast. This is what he said. In many cases, it's better to focus on a small number of things that gives you a large amount of value, rather than a lot of things that give you less. To me, this just seems far more straightforward, and an easier way to think about becoming someone who incorporates more minimalist ideals into our lives. This isn't about how much money you can spend on as few items as possible. It's not about getting rid of all of your stuff. It's simply about finding the value in a small amount of things. That's it. So how to get started? I very much am approaching this like I too am a beginner, because in a sense I am detrained from minimalism, as I haven't practiced it as much as I would like over the last few years. So I'm very much starting this journey off again, like you guys. So, as with everything, we can simply, get rid of things, throw them away, sell them, donate them, or try to create a budget that we can stick to, or just simply not buy things. But does this really look at the root of the issue? Does it really look closely at our behaviours and establish why it is that we do the things that we do? Why are some of us compulsive shoppers? Why is it impossible for some of us to stick to a budget, and why is that actually really hard? And why is simply decluttering without addressing our behaviours potentially not the answer, in my humble opinion? People buy things for so many different reasons, and many of them are tied to emotional responses or triggers, and could potentially be a result from our upbringings. I personally believe that if we want to create true change in our lives, we have to begin by unpicking our behaviours and investigating why we do the things that we do. Why do we have so many books that, more books on our shelves than we could possibly read? Why do we have items of clothing in our wardrobes that have never been worn? We need to investigate what the driving forces behind these actions really are. Okay, to start, let's get on with it, Immy. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing is spending some uninterrupted time simply thinking. In the same interview, Newport says this: "You can't have insights into what I am all about. What are my values? How is my character going to develop? What do I want to do going forward? All of that requires solitude. Your brain just has to sit there, has to think. Things need to bounce off each other. We need it." Here he's referring to the way that our brain creates insights from things that we have watched or listened to or seen. While we are reading or listening, etc., our brain is in a state of processing and cannot create these key insights until afterwards. But to pick up those insights, we need some kind of solitude. Now, this doesn't mean going to a cabin in the woods and being completely alone. We can find solitude in pockets throughout our entire day. So for example, after this video, you could put the screen down on your computer or simply turn it off, put your phone onto silent, and then sit there in silence, thinking. No interruptions, no calls, no emails, no social media, just sitting there in your thoughts and allowing your brain to go through the motions of thinking, what have I learned from this? What are the key insights? What do I value? What are my habits? What are my behaviours? And this could really help you to produce key insights on things like your minimalist journey, for example. But honestly, solitude can really be found anywhere. So for example, when you wake up in the morning and you're making a cup of coffee, if you just, automatically put on the radio, why not try not listening to the radio and just allowing your brain that time to go over things, just to think about whatever, to be bored, and therefore to process thoughts that you've had the night before or the day before, or even just come to a conclusion of a problem you've been trying to solve. Or if you're just on your commute to work and you usually listen to a podcast, why not try the first 20 minutes just podcast free? I know this is a terrifying thing to be bored, but can you remember the last time you weren't listening to something, you weren't watching something, you weren't talking to someone, you didn't have an email ping, you didn't have a call, you didn't have a text, where it was just you, solo, and your thoughts? It's so hard to get that solitude in today's society, and actually it's fundamental if we are to allow our brain to come up with these key insights that will have a huge effect on the way that we live our lives. So why am I talking about the solitude and thinking when we're trying to consider our minimalist journey? Well, it's important to understand your identity and the driving forces behind you even want to become a minimalist. It's important to figure out what your values are and which ones are vital for your happiness and cannot be compromised on. When we are constantly interrupted by things like calls, email, social media, etc., it becomes increasingly hard to figure out who actually we are, to know what we really think and whether our opinions are our own or someone else's. And to me, this is more than a little terrifying. After taking time to think, I want you to sit down and I want you to write a list. Write a list of the values that are most important to you and ideal activities that you would most like to be spending your time doing. After this, I want us to both go and focus on our behaviours and what is preventing us from doing these activities that we love so much. Once I've identified all the behaviours that drain my income and increase the clutter in my home and my brain, I'll begin by recognizing positive habits to alter my behaviors and over time change my mindset from constantly wanting more to be satisfied with what I already have. This is why I am a huge advocate for uninterrupted solitude or alone time. No digital devices, just your mind and yourself. This doesn't need to be a process that takes months, that takes weeks. It could take a few days, but I personally think that the slower the process, the more sustainable it's going to be in the long run. If you're finding it hard to figure out some habits or triggers that you may have that encourage you to focus on stuff, then try working backwards with these 5 questions. What is the last thing that you bought? What kind of mood were you in when you bought it? How long had you been thinking about buying it? Was it 1 minute? Was it 30 days? Was it 6 months because you've been saving for it? The shorter the period of time, the more likely you are to not have actually wanted it in the first place. Was there an external prompt that encouraged you to buy it, like a friend or an advertisement? And what kind of day were you having before you decided to buy this item? Considering a lot of our behaviours are tied to our emotions, it can be helpful to consider the state of our mood during the time of purchase or just before. I know when I'm particularly excited about making a new change in my life, I'm instantly triggered to go and find some tool or piece of equipment that's going to help me to make this new change. For example, when I was like, oh, I'm going to drink loads of water, I immediately was like, do you know what? I'm going to go and find the perfect water bottle that has, is a big amount and I'm going to drink it and I'm going to love it and I'm going to live the dream. And then I have to remind myself, my rational brain comes in and is like, you already have a water bottle, you could just use a glass, and don't be ridiculous. So then I close the tab and I just get right off my screen. But then also, if I'm excited about, for example, this happened last year to me, I was suddenly consistently working out and I was so proud of myself and I was just like, I need new equipment. I need to be wearing new kit to be able, so I would scour the pages of sustainable activewear and I was like, yes, I am gonna look great in this, it's gonna make me feel great. And again, the rational brain was like, Immy, you've already got enough. Close the tab. But my rational side of my brain does not always win. No, it doesn't, otherwise I would have less activewear than I do, my friends. Try to identify these patterns in your behaviour before moving on. Once you feel comfortable with this, I guess it is time to consider the stuff that you do have and whether or not decluttering is the right step for you. I'm not against decluttering, I know it might seem like I am. I just think it's really important to be mindful about how you go about it. Don't get rid of things that genuinely bring you value and don't end up like this extreme minimalist with absolutely nothing in your flat, unless of course that makes you happy. Considering what gives us value is an intensely mindful task, and I think it should be done slowly and sustainably. Something that moves at the same speed at which your behaviours are changing. And try and think really hard before you get rid of something. Motivation is a myth. If you lose motivation on your minimalist journey, I want you to remember that. Success is what drives new motivation. It's not this thing that's just plucked out of the air and makes us feel incredible about one thing and then just goes up in this beautiful, smooth trajectory. No. Motivation is incredibly fickle and therefore it should not be relied upon. If you want to maintain motivation, you need to create small wins, small successes. Our brain sees a win or a success as the motivator to keep you going. So remember, if you're not feeling motivated or whatever, that's completely normal, and just ride the wave and it will come back. Okay, some practical tips to help you remove some triggers from your day-to-day life. Unsubscribe to brand email lists that encourage you to buy their latest items, etc. Like a yoo-hoo just popping in to tell you that we've got a new fabulous extra cool thing that you need. You don't need it. Do the same if you receive text messages. I am actually astounded that they are allowed to text us with offers. I think I must have clicked yes somehow, somewhere on this, but I received a text the other day and I was like, no sir, not for me. Spend less time in front of screens when you are not working. Yes, if this means you don't watch my videos all the time, that is fine. You can come back to them another time, okay? Practice daily gratitude for what you actually have. Makes a big difference. Invest your time and energy in friendships. Like, you don't have to give up hobbies, just be intentional with that hobby and become minimalist in the rest of your life. Try to picture what you already have when a new item from your favorite store gets released. Do I need this? Will it suit me? Will it add value to my life? Will it add a significant amount of value to worth spending this amount of money instead of spending or saving that money for something else? I think this journey is so much harder than we initially give it credit for because it's so entangled in behaviour change, societal norms, and, well, capitalism. So the best advice that I can give you is to think for yourself, trust your mind, and have something that you're working towards or saving towards to remind you why you're doing this in the first place. Speaking of speaking your mind, I want to thank Squarespace for always allowing me to create the content that I want and never making me change anything.
Squarespace gives people a powerful and beautiful online platform from which to create your website just like I have done. Connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content, manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights, all on one easy-to-use platform. You can display posts from your social profiles on your website and automatically push website content to your favorite social media channels so your followers can share it too. If you're interested, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/sustainablyvegan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you very, very soon. Bye.